Moonlight pools in a still pond, no ripples, only mercury poured from some quiet god's palm. Around its edge reeds hold their breath the way silence holds snow. Absolute, tensile, waiting for the exact angle of frost to bend without breaking. Somewhere under bark, resin thickens like syrup left too long in winter's mouth. Each bubble that rises carries last summer's green, a fossil sigh. Air itself feels numbered. Atoms trading places the way wind trades needles. Slow mathematics no one asked for, but everyone obeys. Birch peels in parchment scrolls no one unrolls. Secrets curled like fern fronds before they've decided to live. Gravity counts them anyway, one leaf, two until the scale tips, and they fall. Not defeated, but simply convinced it's easier to ride wind than resist it. Somewhere a creek forgets its bed. Wanders new gravel singing the same old note, lower now, more sure. Every stone it kisses remembers the shape. The pond forgets its own name tonight. Water has turned inward, folded into itself until the surface is a blade, laid flat, no reflection. Only the moon caught and pressed thin, a silver membrane stretched so taut it hums when the cold leans harder. Along the margin, last year's reeds stand like burnt matches after the fire has gone out. Their heads are sealed in rhyme, each seed a minute prism that refuses to scatter, holding its small geometry against the wind's persuasion. Inside the spruce, resin has thickened to the consistency of slow thought. It traps a single needle fallen from above, suspends it mid-sentence, an emerald comma in dark amber. Time there has chosen not to pass it, pools, viscous, patient. Frost writes its quiet equations across every blade, carbon chains locked into hexagons, each lattice a perfect refusal. The grass does not bend, it crystallizes, becomes a field of tiny, exact knives pointing nowhere. An oak leaf loosens no drama, only the soft click of a bond dissolving. It drops through air that has forgotten how to be gentle, turns once, twice, then settles on the ice without sound. The pond accepts the offering, seals it beneath another skin of cold. Farther down, under stone and root, the creek keeps its counsel. It moves by touch alone, tasting the shape of obstacles, wearing them grain by grain. Its voice is almost nothing now, just the long, low vowel of water that has decided centuries are merely another form of distance. There is no line left where water ends and sky begins, only a slow, deliberate breathing that lifts the whole dark body of the world and lets it sink again, measured in centuries per sigh. Arrive, collapse, withdraw, an equation so simple it has outlasted mountains. The sand accepts the lesson, grain by grain, becoming glass, becoming cliff, becoming sand again. Sunlight does not strike the water it is invited in. The surface fractures into a million moving mirrors, each shard tilting just enough to fling the day back at itself in reckless cobalt and turquoise. Light dives, scatters, ricochets through suspended moats until the sea becomes a lantern held from within, glowing with borrowed fire. Woody debris keeps its slow carnival beneath. Warm water rises in slow, lazy columns, carrying plankton that ignite when disturbed, tiny galaxies detonating in green fire. It clings, stubborn, luminous, proof that depth is not the same as darkness. Everything moves, everything shines, everything is exactly where it chose to be. The pond has remembered it is young. Winter arrives without announcement. It simply tightens the air until sound itself crystallizes and falls. A faint, glassy rain no one hears. The sky lowers to the color of a blade left too long in snow. Light does not travel far. It is caught early, pressed thin, and returned as a pale, reluctant shimmer that barely remembers the sun. Trees stand stripped to their essential grammar-black trunks. White spaces, each branch, a deliberate stroke against the page of cold. Snow does not fall so much as assemble. Flakes arrive already decided, hexagons interlocking with the quiet certainty of atoms that have practiced this shape since the beginning of gravity. They land without argument, layer upon layer, until the ground forgets it ever knew another season. Rivers surrender mid-sentence. Water thickens, slows, then stops. An interrupted thought turned to glass. Beneath the ice, fish drift in slow motion, hearts ticking once for every 100 of summer's beats, conserving the small ember of pulse against the long arithmetic of freeze. Wind moves only when it must. When it does, it carries no warmth, only the clean, surgical scent of absolute zero. It sculpts, drifts into waves that will outlast empires, smooths them again before anyone can name the shape. In the deepest part of the forest, a single pine needle loosens. It drops through stillness so complete, the fall takes a century. When it lands, the snow accepts it without a sound, closes over it like a mouth that never intended to speak. Night and day trade places with reluctance. Neither wants the responsibility of so much white. The moon, when it rises, is only a colder kind of snow, hanging in the dark like a coin pressed into a frozen palm. Yet under the bark, under the ice, under the weight of all this deliberate hush, something keeps its counsel. Sap waits, thick and dark as secret blood. Roots measure time in millimeters. The world has not ended. It has only narrowed its focus to the essential act of remaining. Winter is not cruel. It is exact. It keeps what it must, discards the rest, and teaches the rest how to endure by becoming perfectly, perfectly still. A seam appears where there was none. Night's black cloth frays along one edge, and a thin, molten wire slips through, first the color of old blood, then rose, then a gold so pure it hurts the dark to hold it. Ice that ruled for centuries hears a rumor of thaw. It answers with a single, reluctant sigh, a hairline fracture racing across the pond like a thought that has waited all winter to be spoken. The sound is small, but distance carries it faithfully. Every ridge of snow repeats it, softer and softer, until silence itself cracks open. Light begins its slow invasion. It does not conquer, it persuades. Shadows retreat, not in defeat, but in reconsideration, folding themselves into crevices that suddenly remember how to be merely absent rather than absolute. The sky bleeds upward. Indigo loosens its grip, loosens again, until it is only a memory pressed against the underside of morning. Clouds that spent the night as iron filings now rearrange themselves into pale, astonished ribbons, surprised to discover they still know how to float. Somewhere a frozen blade of grass bends, then straightens. A bead of water forms at its tip, perfect, trembling, heavier than the entire night that came before it. When it finally falls, the earth receives it like a verdict, not guilty of perpetual winter after all. Air itself changes allegiance. It was sharp enough to cut bone, now it softens. almost apologetic, carrying the first faint rumor of pine resin, remembering it once intended to flow. The horizon ignites last, as though it needed proof the rest of the world was ready. A single flare climbs the edge of everything, spills over, and for one impossible instant, the snow is not white but molten. Every crystal, a mirror returning the fire it was never meant to survive. Then the moment passes. The light settles, steady and unapologetic, into the ordinary business of another day. But the fracture remains, a bright, irreversible line drawn across the face of the world, announcing that what was sealed has chosen quietly to open. A spark learns to stay. Not the brief flare that dies against wet bark, but a small, stubborn ember cupped in a nest of tinder that refuses the wind's verdict. It glows, subsides, glows again, until the night itself is forced to step back one measured pace. From that single point of refusal, heat begins its quiet conquest. Grass dries, curls, remembers it once knew how to burn. A tongue of flame climbs a twig, tastes resin, decides the taste is worth keeping. The fire widens its circle the way water widens when a stone is finally persuaded to sink. Slowly, then all at once. Ash falls upward first, gray snow in reverse, then settles into the first deliberate pattern, a ring of blackened earth around a heart still pulsing orange. Within that ring, the ground is warmer than it has ever been, and warmth, once established, is reluctant to leave. Nearby, a stand of saplings leans away. Not in fear, but calculation, they have learned that distance can be a form of survival. Yet one seed, lighter than thought, rides the rising heat and lands just beyond the scorch. It cracks open in the night, sends down a root that tastes both char and promise. Stone learns a new trick. Held long enough above the flame, it forgets its old cold name, turns the color of sunset, then splits with a sound like the world clearing its throat. Inside the fracture, quartz glitters, a secret the rock kept for 1,000,000 years, now casually revealed. The fire keeps its counsel through seasons. It learns to sleep beneath a crust of ash, to wake when breath is offered, to travel inside a hollow reed or between two careful palms. Each time it returns, it is a little less wild, a little more certain of its right to exist. Rivers notice. They carry the smell of smoke farther than wind ever could, deposit soot on distant snow, turn glaciers faintly pink with the news. Mountains that slept under ice for millennia feel something shift in their marrow. An itch, a question, the beginning of an answer. At the center of every controlled burn, a clearing appears. The earth there is black and rich and waiting. Into that darkness, the first deliberate seeds are pressed, not scattered by whim of bird or breeze, but placed, measured, chosen. They lie still for one heartbeat, two, then decide the dark is no longer an ending. Above them, the sky widens, astonished. It has watched fire dance for eons, but never like this. Never with intent, never with memory, never with the quiet, terrifying promise that tomorrow the circle will be larger still. The fire forgets its keeper. One dawn, it slips the circle of stones and runs laughing across dry grass, faster than any hand can follow. By dusk, the horizon itself is burning, a red mouth that swallows forests whole and spits only cinders back. Cities that once commanded rivers now beg them for mercy. The rivers refuse. They rise swollen with melted glaciers, thick with the ash of 1,000 roofs, and carry marble bridges away like toys a child has outgrown. Water finds every crack poured by earlier arrogance, widens them, remembers its older rights. Wind joins the argument. It tears the last leaves from orchards planted in perfect rows, flings them skyward until the air is a storm of green confetti, mourning its own funeral. Grain elevators stand empty, their doors banging like loose teeth. Iron begins to remember rust. It flakes from girders in slow red snow, returns to the earth that lent it for a while. Glass, once proud and transparent, learns opacity again. First a fracture, then a web, then a sudden white bloom as the pane forgets how to hold together. Fields salted by centuries of careless irrigation whiten into mirrors no crop will ever trust again. Beneath them, aquifers sink deeper than any pump can reach, taking the memory of sweetness with them. In the high places, ice forgets to return. Glaciers that marched and retreated on schedule for 500,000 years simply stop, thin into ghostly ribbons, then vanish, leaving nothing but bare rock and the stunned echo of dripping water. The sky itself grows bored with blue. It thickens to the color of old bruises, then to a permanent nicotine haze. Sunlight arrives filtered through 1,000,000 tons of drifting char, a dim coin pressed against dirty glass. Somewhere, a single orchard cherry still clings to its branch, perfect, impossible red. It ripens, drops, rolls into a crack in baked clay, and is gone. No hand reaches, no mouth tastes. The tree does not bother to blossom next spring. It has understood the contract is broken. At night, the stars return, brighter than they have been in 10,000 years. They look down on empty roads, on roofs collapsed inward like tired lungs, on rivers carving new beds through what used to be downtowns. The silence is not peaceful, it is absolute. The hush after a long scream no one thought to finish. Only the earth keeps breathing, slow and patient. It folds ruined marble back into limestone, rust back into ore, ash back into soil. Roots that waited beneath parking lots for a signal that never came, now thread upward through broken concrete, tasting air again. Nothing is punished. Nothing is forgiven. Everything is simply allowed to continue without witness, until the planet itself forgets there was ever a difference between ruin and renewal.